Hi, my name is Evan Unti, guide at Deschutes Angler Fly Shop, and today is part 2 on our series on how to build tension while Euro nymphing, particularly on the front end of the drift. If you haven't seen part 1, I would highly recommend watching that one first. There'll be a link in the description at the bottom of the page, so go check that out if you haven't seen it yet. Part 2, we're going to talk about how to manage the tension. So the first video talked about how to build tension right out of the gate so that as soon as the flies touch the water, we have control over the drift. We've got enough tension where we have contact with the fly and can detect any fish that takes it, and our drift starts beautifully right out of the gate. The problem is how do you maintain that tension and that level of control throughout the remainder of the drift, okay? The second component of this, I like to call the macro management of tension, because this piece of it is going to be the main piece that helps continue to keep that tension all the way throughout the drift. Now, of course, we need tension, but we're not physically pulling on the flies. We're just trying to maintain a certain level of contact for control and strike detection. So the second piece of the puzzle in terms of maintaining tension throughout the drift is to move the rod downstream. Now the rod's going to move downstream slower than the flies, or roughly at the same pace of the flies, but by simply moving the rod, I'm able to take a lot of the slack that would develop in the leader out, and I'm able to do it without creating a lot of bounce in the sighter, meaning my flies bouncing up and down. I can very smoothly and delicately take slack out and maintain tension without disturbing the drift. So I flick the flies up, move gently right, and then as the flies come down, I just keep moving the rod tip, moving the rod tip, moving the rod tip, moving the rod tip. They touch, got tension, now I got to keep it. I'm keeping this tension by just simply moving the rod tip through the drift. Watch the chartreuse sighter here. There's tension, tension, tension. The tension is maintained throughout the drift, and I'm doing that by moving the rod tip. That is the main piece that is taking that slack out. If I'd stopped moving the rod tip and just pointed it, you can see that slack starts to develop. And now if I try to strip it out of there, you can see my sighter starts to bounce quite a bit. So if I put it out there and I leave it and then I'm like, oh, I got to catch up, and I strip, 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 by the time I've gotten control, the flies are almost back to me. Simply throw it up, gently move the rod tip downstream throughout the drift, downstream, 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 downstream. And just by moving that rod downstream and doing nothing else, I'm able to control the drift and maintain a certain level of tension all the way through the drift, which means I've got control and good strike detection. Always think of it as just moving downstream, moving downstream, moving downstream, moving downstream. The other thing you want to avoid, and this is real common, is the lift on the rod. Rather than moving it, people have a tendency to want to keep lifting, lifting, lifting to get that tension. The problem with lifting is no matter what you do with the lift, you're going to create a certain level of bounce, and ultimately you're going to gently be pulling the flies laterally across the current and back towards you. So if I just keep the rod tip at the same height and just simply move the rod tip downstream, 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 I'm able to get a lot of control over my drift without creating a lot of bounce. If you like this video, subscribe to our YouTube page. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Have a great day.